What's going on, guys? Boss6 here, back to another video, and today, finally, I have finally done this video. It's something I've been wanting to finish for at least 2 months now, but I'm finally able to get this done. I, of course, am talking about another edition of the Metal Month Retrospective, as I am going to be ranking all 16 studio albums from Florida, technically Buffalo, death metal legends themselves, Cannibal Corpse. Jesus Christ, this took me way longer than I should have, but my reasons are simple. One, I work a lot, and two, my computer was fucking up, so I had to redo so much shit, and just a lot of other stuff in my life got in my way, so I wasn't able to put all of my focus and all of my energy into listening 16 albums from these guys. And my God, what a discography. I mean, honestly, this was a very, very, very challenging listen because people may say this band's kind of like the AC/DC of death metal, and you wouldn't technically be wrong, but you're also not right, so there you go there. But, yeah, 16 albums of this band. And holy shit, what a turnaround these guys have had. You know, these guys have been going for over 40 years now, so it's pretty enticing. Before I actually get into the backstory of the band, how did I get into this band? Well, oddly enough, I had a love-hate relationship with Cannibal Corpse. So back when I was in high school, I was getting out of my weird country phase that I was in when I was about like 6 and 7. And then I was getting to more of the hard rock and, you know, classic rock bands like AC/DC, Van Halen, the Rolling Stones. I did listen to GNR for a little bit, and then I thankfully got out of that phase. But when I was getting into high school, I was starting to get into more of the heavier stuff. I was starting to dig a little bit of groove metal, new metal, mainly bands like Slipknot. I did listen to Korn. I was really big into metalcore at that time, like Trivium, even though I don't really consider them metalcore in a way. You know, those kinds of bands. And oddly enough, death metal took me a little bit longer to get into because I actually got into black metal a lot more than death metal, believe it or not, because I just love like the cold, eerie atmosphere. I was really digging into bands like Bathory, Dark Throne, Immortal, Inquisition, all those, those kind of dark bands, if you will. And one of the first songs from Cannibal Corpse I actually remember listening to was I Come Blood, and I remember listening to that on the radio, and I was like, I don't like this, I don't dig it, I just didn't like the vocals, I thought it was a little too edgy for what it was being, and that goes to show you how dumb I was. Well, I still am dumb now, because apparently I haven't learned my lesson 7 years later, but I certainly digress. I won't get into it, but yeah, I wasn't really into, death metal as much, and then I started getting a little bit into more melodic death metal with, like, In Flames, At the Gates, a hint bit of Carcass thrown in there, and then when I finally listened to all of Death's albums, if you guys remember my Death retrospective, I slowly became a big death metal fan. Now I was starting to listen to, like, Deicide, Morbid Angel, Obituary, and almost all the Florida guys. And I finally got around to listening to Cannibal Corpse. And if you guys remember on my channel, when I did my random album reviews, a little series I did on my channel way back in my time to just kind of, dip my toe into the more metal content, I remember listening to Violence Unimagined and Tomb of the Mutilated and was really blown away how much I really dig those albums. And then I became a big Cannibal Corpse fan. I got some albums from them. I'm now a huge fan of these guys. I hope to see them on tour one day. I know my good buddy Ricky, if you're watching this, Ricky, you lucky bastard, he's actually planning to go see them live. And I hope I get to see them live, because who doesn't want to see the man with the largest neck in mankind, aka Corpse Grinder. But yeah, that's essentially how I got here. I hope to get a shirt one day, but I have a feeling my parents are going to be asking me if I'm actually okay in the head. But the short answer is no. The long answer is fuck no. But that's besides the point. But yeah, I've gone on a bit of a tirade as it is. So yeah, without further ado, kick back, grab a snack, grab your friends, grab your loved ones, and grab your machete, because we're going to go on this very, very bloody and very awesome discography of Cannibal Corpse. So, backstory. Cannibal Corpse was actually formed after the breakup of two bands, Beyond Death and Tyrant Sin. Now, Tyrant Sin was more of a death thrash act from the Buffalo area that consisted of future Cannibal members. Vocalist Chris Barnes, drummer Paul Mazurkowitz, bassist Rich Ziegler, and guitarist Bob Rusey, who were all high school mates at the time. They recorded two demos in 1987, Desecration of the Graves and Chaotic Destruction. Now, after one more demo in 88 titled Mutant Supremacy, the band will ultimately split up, and that would be basically the end of Tyrant Sin. Meanwhile, Beyond Death, who was more of a thrash act, had Jack Owen on guitar and Alex Webster on bass. Now, after the Slice of Death demo in 87 and the Yuck Fu demo, that was a pretty clever title, also in 88, Jack and Alex would ultimately leave, and Cannibal Corpse was formed in Buffalo in late 1988. And Beyond Death was would later go on to make like an album like later on in like the late 2000s. They had like a couple other EPs going on, but this they were basically more well known for having two members of the biggest death metal band going to this very day. So after jamming the right material, they needed a name because they really didn't have a name at this point. And during a jam session, Alex blurted out Cannibal Corpse, and boom, it just clicked like that, and the band liked it, and thus the name was born, which kind of makes you question what really is a cannibal corpse. Like, is it a zombie eating itself? Or is it a corpse that's cannibalistic? Like, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but hey, I mean, it's metal. Sometimes you don't need the logic to be in metal, but anyways, they played their first live show at Buffalo's Red Rock Cafe in March of 1989, and shortly after recording their self-titled demo, after opening for acts like Dark Angel and Metallica, they finally got some traction after the Buffalo News mentioned them. And during that time, they opened for bands like Blood Feast, Death, The Accused, and Creator. So they also play with local death metal act Malevolent Creation as well. And I'll get to that band later on because I have a pretty important member in that band. They would also sign with Metal Blade Records, which would be their label home. They have never changed the label since, which is one of the rare times that a band would stick on a label to this very day. It's like Sodom with SPV/Steamhammer. So yeah, that'll be their home to this very day. Mike Fowley of Metal Blade, one of them signed almost immediately just because of how much he loved the song titles, and Brian Slagle, the current president of Metal Blade, thought that they were interesting and cool. After getting on a label, they went to the legendary Moore Sound Studios in Tampa, which I would love to go to one day, with famed producer Scott Burns, who was already getting a big name for himself at that point because he was already with bands like, I think he was with Cancer. He was going to do Death. He was doing Obituary. You know, he was really starting to put his name out there. But this is where he would really start to become a household name. And after getting him and finally getting a label, on August 17th, 1990, we would get their debut album, Eaten Back to Life. This is my number 10. I actually really dig this album. This is more of a different album for them because this is when they were really more thrash-laden, a little bit of like Slayer. There's some elements of Dark Angel thrown in here, like more death thrash in a way, but it's still death metal oriented. It's just very thrashy, which I actually really do like that style of death metal. Chris Barnes has this like bark to him that I think is really nice. The intro to Shredded Humans is pretty iconic. Edible Autopsy, Mangled is pretty catchy. Scatter Remains, Splatter Brains, Born in a Casket, The Undead Will Feast. Skull Full of Maggots is a classic, and Buried in the Backyard. Those are absolutely live staples. And this version I have is the 2002 reissue, which has Bore in a Casket Live, which is one of their bonus songs. But, yeah, pretty cool stuff. The album artwork is, it's a little goofy if you look at it now, but back then it was like, holy shit, this band might actually be something in the future, and lo and behold, they are. The only thing that I could kind of gripe about is that it doesn't have their classic logo, which might be a bit of a controversial opinion. I actually kind of prefer their old scratched logo than the logo they have now. It's a good logo, don't get me wrong, but I think the scratched logo was just a little more brutal, and I really dig that. So, that's just kind of a nitpick on my part, but overall, damn good stuff. Production is actually pretty solid for their first album. A little bit raw, not as technical as it's going to be, but still really damn good. And you could tell that this band is going to be going somewhere. So, yeah, number 10, Eaten Back to Life. So after Eaten Back to Life, they toured a bit in the local areas, and they were inspired by these seeking the new opportunities that was in the Florida scene at the time. So they went back to Tampa, and on July 1st, 1991, so about a year later, we would get their second studio album, Butchered at Birth. Now, this one is a very different album. This is when they started to shift away from the more thrashy death metal and embrace the more brutal death metal that was starting to slowly get around this point. You had bands like Baphomet, Suffocation, those bands in particular that were really starting to put on the more brutal death metal kind of sound to it. But Cannibal Corpse wanted to take that sound and make it their own. And my God, did they get more brutal on this album, especially with the album artwork, which has the iconic cover of like these like weird like doctor zombies butchering a pregnant woman with babies on meat hooks in the background. And actually, a fun fact: the Thralls of Metal guys, when they did their ranking, Nick had a poster of that, and his mom walked in. She was like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" That I always get a chuckle at that every time I watch that ranking. But, yeah, this is an iconic album. However, I might get some shit for this one. I have this ranked at my number 11. Don't get me wrong, the song of this album, absolutely top notch. This is where Cannibal Corpse really found their footing. It's just the problem with this album, and I agree with everyone that has a big complaint with this album, is the production. It's very, very, very thin. Like, this is probably their worst produced album. There's a couple other albums I might argue is a little bit worse than this one, but yeah, it's pretty bad. The drums sound like they're recorded in the back of a hallway. The bass is almost non-existent. The guitars sound a little thin. And with Barnes, the more like low guttural vocals, is kind of like the only thing that really stands out on this album, at least in terms of production-wise, because this is honestly one of Barnes' better vocal performances, which isn't really saying a lot after 1994, but then again, that's a very, very, very low bar. But you get some fantastic songs. Meat Hook Sodomy. I mean, come on, that's a fun song. Gutted, Under the Rotted Flesh. Really like the nice melodies on that one. Covered with Sores, Vomit the Soul, which actually has Glenn Benton of Deicide doing backing vocals, which is awesome. Title track, Rancid Reputation, Enters Decay. I mean, top to bottom, this is a damn near flawless album. I just wish the production was better. If the production was a lot better than it already is, this probably would have been top 5 for me, but unfortunately, the production just kind of ruins the album for me. I know, some people might say, well, you like, Redeemer of Souls by Judas Priest. Well, there's a difference. There are two completely different spectrums to that. At least, the production for that album doesn't ruin it for me completely, even though it is the worst. That is the worst produced Priest album. This is probably the worst produced Cannibal album, but it just kind of bothered me because it just felt so unbelievably thin in the mix. Like, the mix got, they stripped away some of the mud then the sound would have been a whole lot higher, but unfortunately, it comes in at my number 11. Sorry, guys. So after Butchered at Birth, they actually went to Europe for the first time, and they were blown away with how much they got love overseas, with how many people loved them. And Alex remembered on their I forgot what was that documentary called? Like Eat Moscow Alive or something like that. It was some kind of live video they did in Russia, and they were just blown away about how many people adored these guys, and they kind of became, overnight sensations as the days would go on. So while the fans loved the band, the guys weren't really liking each other, and this is when the tension was really starting at this point, which some people tend to forget because Barnes and the rest of the guys were really starting to tense up during the tour. According to Alex, Barnes was basically managing the band, or managing the tour himself, and the guys didn't know how they were going to get their finances handled. So they kind of had a private split that a lot of people didn't know, because Barnes was on one side, Paul and Alex were on the other, and it was kind of like Jack was in the middle, like, Paul was kind of just doing whatever, or Bob, I should say, was just kind of doing whatever, but they were making new material, and eventually they did get back together, and they actually toured in Europe with Atheist and Gorguts, and they'd be part of the Complete Control tour with Obituary, Malevolent Creation, and Agnostic Front in 1992. So after the tour, they go back into the studio, and my God, they release an absolute monster of an album. On September 22nd, 1992, we would get Tomb of the Mutilated. This is my number 3. This, I felt like, is what Butchered at Birth was trying to be. A go for the throat, straight ahead brutal death metal album. And this is the last album that they would do where they go into this more brutal death metal territory. Because, the style was just very, tight. The production is up in the mix, which is day and night better than Butchered at Birth. And the song titles got even more brutal, and Barnes' vocals are just gross on this album in particular. And just top to bottom, filled with fantastic songs. Of course, Hammered Smash Face, which would be the biggest hit off of this band's entire discography. I Come Blood, Addicted to Vaginal Skin, Split Wide Open. Necro PDF File, I don't want to say that word in case I get in trouble, but Necro, Jared Fogle, I guess. I don't know if that's better or worse. Postmortem Ejaculation. Beyond the Cemetery is a pretty damn good deep cut. People might be shocked that I don't have Entrails, Ripped from Virgin's Coon. But I don't know, like, that song is good musically, but I don't know, I just really couldn't get into it as much. But yeah, this is just some fantastic stuff. I love the bass on this album. The bass is really well mixed throughout. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this album other than it's a fucking death metal classic. That's all I really need to say about this album, and this really put them on the map and made them a household name. So yeah, number 3, Tomb of the Mutilated. Do I really need to say anything else? So this album was a huge success, and again, gave him a household name. Unfortunately, there was problems in the band again. Mainly with Bob. They did a self-titled EP titled Hammer Smash Face, where Bob had to redo his parts, which Jack wasn't too pleased by, because considering that Bob was a huge fan of, punk rock, his style was sloppier than Jack's, but at least in a live setting, Bob was on it. And unfortunately, with Cannibal Corpse, who are just on a bullet, or who are just going on a fucking roll right now, your chops do have to show up. And Bob kind of knew that too, but unfortunately, things kind of got thrown to the wayside here. So, unfortunately, in February of 1993, Bob was let go of the band. Now, the task was hard, and people assumed Alex was the one who fired him because Bob actually attended a party when the Bills won the AFC Championship game, and Alex called Bob, gave him the news, and Bob was upset. So, for you Buffalo Bills fans, the reason why y'all didn't win those Super Bowls is because Bob Rusey got fired from Cannibal Corpse. I am joking, of course. I had to throw that sports humor in there somewhere or the other. But the guys weren't big on this decision, and the timing was bad, too, because they were about to go on tour, and they had no guitarist. And later on, they would kind of patch things up with Bob, like Chris felt very bad for him, because, Bob, hell of a guitarist, really nice guy. And apparently, if I remember correctly, he is now a professional golfer, or like a golf trainer, which... good for him, really, good for him. So, yeah, they were about to go on tour, and they didn't have a guitarist. So, they would call out to Malevolent Creation guitarist Rob Barrett, who, yeah, like I said earlier, Malevolent Creation and, Cannibal Corpse, kind of an odd marriage, if you ask me. But, they shared some members, so I guess there's that. So, shortly after Bob's dismissal, the band would make a cameo in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and that launched them into superstardom because I talked about this when I talked about my Napalm Death ranking, but there's kind of some rumors going around that, Jim Carrey wanted Napalm Death be in the movie, but they opted out last minute, so then Cannibal was brought in, and then they played like a very abridged version of Hammer Smash Face, and that's where their career started. And they didn't know if Ace Ventura: Pet Detective was going to be a worldwide sensation that it is to this very day, and it's one of the best movies of all time, if you ask me. It's arguably Jim Carrey's best. I don't know, there's a couple up there that might take the cake. But, yeah, that became, one of the most memorable movies, not just of the 90s, but I would say of all time. So, after the cameo, they went into the studio, and this will be the second to last album that will be produced by Scott Burns. So on April 12th, 1994, they release the badassery known as The Bleeding. This is my number one. I kind of knew it was going to be going into this ranking. This, I feel like, is a greatest hits of Cannibal Corpse. If you want to throw in, Hammered Smash Face, this is basically a greatest hits. This is still has a little bit of that brutal death metal mentality, but it's more straight ahead death metal, but more hooky. And not me hooky, more, catchy, and has more of those big hooks that sometimes this band can kind of lose a little bit. But, my God, this album is just fucking incredible from start to finish. And has some of the most memorable tracks of their entire catalog, like Staring Through the Eyes of the Dead, absolutely fantastic stuff. That was one of the big singles off this album. Fuck with the Knife is fantastic. Ripped and Strangled, Pulverized, Return to Flesh, the evil melodies is just insane. The Pickaxe Murder, She Was Asking For It, title track, Fortified Broken Glass. Top to bottom, this is a fantastic album. They even do a bonus song, The Exorcist by Possessed, which is a damn good cover. This is Chris Barnes' best vocal performance. Not really saying a whole lot, but this is his best performance. Everyone is firing on all cylinders with this album. The songwriting and the song structure is just top-notch. I can't get enough of this album. This album is a fucking masterpiece. One of my favorite death metal albums, not just of the 90s, but of all time. Up there with, like, Death's Human, Cause of Death, Covenant. It's up there with all those albums. So, yeah. Really, really, really love this album. I can't get enough of it. Absolutely fantastic. It's my number one. All hail The Bleeding. So, after the tour with The Bleeding end, Rob convinced the guys to relocate to Florida, and this will be the end of the Chris Barnes era. Because more tension would start. Mainly Chris wouldn't let the guys collaborate lyrically, and Barnes was starting his 6 Feet Under project at the time, and things were really getting heated. Like, they were just having shouting matches almost every time they crossed paths. And, yeah, things just weren't going well for the band. So, during the, so in 95, during the sessions for their next album, Chris was let go by the band while on tour. And the executives were not happy about it, because, they were about to go on a big tour. Barnes at this point was a household name. Like, he was an established guy, and they looked at him as, like, the death metal vocalist, which, might be insane to say today, but at that time, like, nobody was really sounding like Barnes with this more, like, kind of, like, dry, throaty delivery. So the fact that they released him in the middle of a big tour was kind of ballsy and bonkers, to say the least. So they were about to go on tour, and they had no vocalist. So they made a call out to Florida death metal act Monstrosity to get their frontman George Corpse Grinder Fisher. And Monstrosity, by the way, fairly underrated death metal act. I might do a ranking of them maybe next year, because that band almost, I feel like, gets, no love at all, because, they were kind of at the right place, wrong time, especially with, the Florida scene at that point. But they made some killer albums in that time period. So Chris was out, George was in. And before their next album, there was actually a demo that some people tend to forget called Created to Kill, which a couple of tracks would be rewritten for the new album, and that will be the last thing that the band will record with Barnes, because Chris will later go on to be in 6 Feet Under. So with Barnes gone and Corpse Grinder being the new guy, they entered into the studio. May 21st, 1996, the last album with Scott Burns as a producer, we would get Vile. Now, this is actually a different album cover. There's an alternative album cover with this one, where it's like the guy expanded out. But, yeah, this is the 06 reissue I have here. Well, this, unfortunately, is my second last. This is my number 15. This one I feel like is pretty divisive among Cannibal fans. Like, some people really love this album and say it's one of the best, or people say it's one of their weakest. Unfortunately, I'm on this side of the camp. It's still good. There's no such thing as a bad Cannibal Corpse album. The problem I have with this album, or problems, I should say, number one, I'm not a fan of the production. The production is very thin on this album. You could tell that Burns was on his way out. You could say he was burned out, if you will, pun unintended. Yeah, this wasn't really that good of a production job. Number two, the songs themselves don't really stand out to me. Like, with the Bleeding, what that album thrived on was, yeah, there were some more faster moments, but at least there were some more groovier hooks. This one is just, just bulletry and aggression, and while that's not a bad thing, they do it way better on other albums. And for this one, I just didn't feel like it really congealed for me. And, yeah, that's just kind of like my complaints. The production's not the best, not a lot of standout tracks, and it just kind of just goes, 100 speed miles an hour with, like, little to no breaks. So, yeah, there's nothing really about the sound that stood out. Devoured by Vermin's a good song. I think a fun fact about that song, while they were rehearsing it, George was trying to hit that scream at the beginning of it, but he couldn't do it, so after a couple tries, he went to go take a piss. He looked in the mirror and said, "You have one more chance to do it, do not fuck it up. If you do this, then you'll become a nobody." And he hit the screen, and there you go. That's where we're at right now, and let's just say it worked out for the better for all of us. But this figure's alright. Relentless Beating, which is the first instrumental they ever did. It's solid. They do better instrumentals afterwards, but I thought that was a very interesting footnote. Absolute Hatred's alright. I guess Monolith is okay. Just nothing about this album really stood out to me. Like, it just kind of feels like it's just there. It's not bad, but it's not really an album I'm going to be going back to anytime soon, apart from the tracks I mentioned. So yeah, it's not really great. Again, it's not bad. I know some people are going to look at me a little bit weird, but I just wasn't really big on this album. It's still good, but that's just about it. It's just a good album, and, you know, nothing more, nothing less. So, yeah, not really the world's biggest fan of this album. There's still some good tracks, but ultimately, didn't do a whole lot for me. So, yeah, Vile is my number 15. So after Vile, Scott Burns will be done with the music industry shortly thereafter. I believe he would do maybe another album, and I know he did the Despise the Sun EP for Suffocation, and then after that he would basically be gone, and then he would come back for like another album or two. I know he did Frozen in Time by Obituary, I think, and then after that he was basically done because he didn't want to be pigeonholed as the death metal guy, and I don't blame him. I really don't blame him because you're going to get burned out by doing that shit. So I don't really blame Burns for wanting to leave when he could. So also after Vile, they would tour with the Misfits, Anthrax, and Life of Agony in '96. And Barnes at this point, along with 6 Feet Under, had another project going on called Torture Killer. And they decided to change the logo because Barnes designed the original logo and wanted to avoid, copyright and more shit from Barnes. So they just kind of they would kind of want to avoid more stuff from him, so I guess that was smart on their part. So, February of '97, Rob would leave due to musical differences and rejoin with Malevolent Creation. Also, he would do Solstice and Hate Plow. Enter Pat O'Brien for guitars, who would be a bit of a mainstay here for a little bit. He was actually recommended by Steve Tucker of Morbid Angel at the time. And after a new lineup change with Jim Morris as a producer now taking over the chair for Scott Burns, they would go back to the studio on April 21st, 1998. We would get Gallery of Suicide. This one's my number 14. It's a bit of a better album than Vile, in my opinion. I do appreciate the production is just a little bit better. I kind of do appreciate that. Again, though, same thing with Vile. Not a whole lot's really going on with this album. I do appreciate there's a little more atmosphere on this album, man. Cannibal Corpse and Atmosphere don't really work. Like, that's kind of an odd blending effect. But it kind of works with this album here that I really, really, really dig. Again, Corpse Grinder, really damn good song. Really good songs here. I Will Kill You is a fun opening track. Sentence to Burns, stand out for me. From Skin to Liquid, kind of reminds me a little bit of Gojira, early on, the beginning really sounds very Gojira-esque, and I actually kind of like it. Stabbed in the Throat, Chambers of Blood, Headless, the guitar tone on that song is just vicious. But, yeah, after that, not really a whole lot, just a couple decent tracks here and there. It's good, but again, not really a whole lot going on with this one. Again, if you kind of skip over this album, you really wouldn't miss much. But yeah, it's solid, it's good. That's all I really need to say, and it comes in at my number 14. So after Gallery of Suicide, they would tour their nuts off because that's all what they do. And weirdly enough, Gallery actually got them a lot of attention from black metal fans. So that really turned black metal fans into fans of Cannibal Corpse, which I thought was very interesting. And though, ironically enough, they would tour with some black metal acts. I think they would tour with, Dark Funeral and a couple others, which I thought was actually, I think Black Anvil was one of them too, which I thought was pretty interesting. So after the tour, they would go back into the studio, this time with producer Colin Richardson, which I've named him on the channel before from a Napalm Death ranking. Feel free to check that out. So yeah, with Richardson in the producer chair, on October 19th, 1999, we would get Bloodthirst. This is my number 8. Holy shit. What a turnaround this band had. This is where Corpse Grinder came alive on this album. His cadence has got even more insane. The songwriting got a lot better on this album. There's a lot more memorable songs. There's a lot more hooks on this album. And, you know, all these songs are pretty short too. And it's one of their shorter albums. But it's all damn good. Pounded into Dust. Unleashing the Bloodthirsty. I love that line saying, "They live, they die," which I think is awesome. Spine Splitter. Oh, that is just gross. Ecstasy and Decay. Coffin Feeder. Hacksaw Decapitation. Condemned to Agony. Blowtorch Slaughter. How the fuck they come up with these names? I don't get it. Yeah, this is just fucking incredible. Absolutely great stuff. And they really really got the band back a little bit, because the last 2 albums, they were kind of floundering a little bit. This is where they finally got back into the groove and really got back on their feet. And yeah, I think it's a fantastic album. The only reason why it's not higher is because there's just some albums I like more. Again, this was such a pain in the ass to do because this band is grossly consistent. But yeah, this is a fantastic album. One of the best in their discography, in my opinion. And it comes in at my number 8. So, after Bloodthirst, fans and critics dug the shit out of this album. And after touring and releasing the Live Cannibalism live album in 2000, they will go on to the Sonic Ranch with producer Neil Kernan, who I talked about him when I did my Nile ranking, and his discography is all over the place. It's from Hall & Oates to Neil Diamond to Judas Priest to Kansas to Nile to Cannibal Corpse. Seriously, again, it's like Colin Richardson in a way. It's absolutely ridiculous. But on February 22nd, 2002, we would get Gore Obsessed. Well, somebody had to come in last, and unfortunately, it's this album. This is my number 16, and this is kind of the general consensus for everyone's least favorite Cannibal album, but it's not bad. It's just a Cannibal Corpse album, which is the only thing you could really say about it. There's not really a whole lot going on with this album, too. Like, again, you could have cut this out of the whole catalog. It really wouldn't miss a whole lot, if you ask me. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one. Production is good. It's a little more polished. The drums sound good. Savage Butchery is a fun song. Pit of Zombies is a standout. Compelled to Lacerate. That song honestly could have been on Bloodthirst, if you're asking me. Yeah, not really a whole lot going on here. It's just a Cannibal Corpse album. That's all I can really say about it. It's not bad, but there's nothing really memorable about it. And unfortunately, someone had to come in last. So, yep, it's my number 16. What more can you do? So after Gore Obsessed, they would tour heavily. And after releasing the Worm Infested EP, which was more or less just a covers EP, which the only one that really stood out to me was, what the hell was it? I think, what was the one Metallica song they did? Fuck, I'm blanking. Shit. Actually, let me look it up really, really, really quickly. Because I know, I apologize. I should have looked this up beforehand. No Remorse. That's what it was. I think it was it No Remorse? I'm just now remembering it. Come on, damn it. Yes, it was. All right. So, there you go there. Yeah, it was their cover of No Remorse, which that was really damn good stuff there. So, after the EP, they will go back into the studio, and just about 2 years later, on February 24th, 2004, we would get The Wretched Spawn. This one's my number 9. It's a bit of a step up over Gore Obsessed. I would love this album more. If it wasn't for one thing and one thing only, and I'll get to that here in a little bit, but this album, I feel like, features some of the best songs in their entire discography. And it's one of the more aggressive albums, too. Psychotic Precision, Decency Defined, Frantic Disembowelment, which I think, if I remember correctly, they can't really play that song because of just how wild it is. The title track, Festering in the Crypt, is still dark and eerie sounding. Nothing Left to Mutilate, Blunt Force Castration, Slain, They Deserve to Die. All these songs fucking rip. My main complaint with this album is that I feel like the production is a little too clean for how aggressive it is. Like, mainly in the drums. Like, the drums, they kind of... I didn't like it at first, but as the album went on, I liked it a little bit more. But I don't know, I felt like they could have beefed up the guitars just a little bit, in my opinion. Corpse Grinder still sounds fantastic. But I felt like they could have beefed up the guitars just a little bit more. And I think it would have been a little bit better. It's still a great album, but I feel like they made better albums after this one. So yeah, number 9, The Wretched Spawn. So after Wretched Spawn, the guys noticed that Jack was really starting to become distant from the guys, and they decided to let him go in 2004, and he would later go on to join Deicide, but he also had another band called Adrift, but he will later go on to be in Deicide, which I think is a little bit interesting because I believe, if I remember correctly, I think Jack is Christian, and if you know anything about Deicide, then you know, but I think it's a little bit interesting. But, yeah, Stench of Redemption. That's all I really need to say about that. So they were going to go on tour in Mexico, and again, they had no guitarist. Enter Origin guitarist Jeremy Turner, who was recommended by Eric Rutan, who was a good friend of the band's, who was of Hate Eternal at that point. And Jeremy was a big fan of the guys, he was a big fan of the band, and this was kind of a dream of him to play with Cannibal Corpse. So they played in Wacken Open Air for 6 months, and they have a U.S. tour with Hypocrisy, Vile, and Exhumed in late 2004. Now in 2005, another member will return, Rob Barrett, after he would rejoin. Jeremy wanted to spend time with family, so we kind of get a bit of a return because, Rob was gone for a little bit, and now we got Pat O'Brien and Rob Barrett just exchanging leads. And with Eric Rutan on production, March 21st, 2006, they release one of the best albums in their entire discography, Kill. This is my number 2. This is my favorite of the Corpse Grinder era. Jesus fucking Christ, this thing is so unbelievably hostile. The production on this album is so damn heavy. And it's kind of like The Bleeding in a way where it's heavy and fast, but it's catchy as all hell. There's a lot of hooks on this album. Like Murder Worship. Well, that's one of my favorite Cannibal Corpse songs. 5 Nails Through the Neck, Make Them Suffer, Time to Kill Is Now, Death Walking Terror, Barbaric Bludgeonings, Brain Removal Device, Maniacal, the closing track, Infinite Misery. It's doomy, it's nasty sounding. I dig the shit out of this album. This has been always one of my favorite Cannibal Corpse albums. I remember when I got it off of eBay and just jammed the shit out of it. To this day, still jammed the shit out of it. This was an absolute fantastic album. The only thing that really sucks is the album cover, but that's got nothing to do with the album as a whole, so yeah, this is a fantastic album. Fucking love it. Absolutely killer stuff. This album kills. Pun unintended. So yeah, number 2, great stuff. So this was considered a turning point in the band's career and praised heavily by fans and critics. They would also be part of the Sounds of the Underground tour, which included Behemoth and In Flames. Remember when In Flames was relevant? Pepperidge Farm remembers. And remember when Behemoth wasn't as cheesy and as edgy and cringy as they are now? Pepperidge Farm remembers. But they would also headline a tour with Necrophagist and Dying Fetus later on that year. After some more tours, it was studio time. So, February 3rd, 2009, with Eric Bertan on production yet again, we begin Evisceration Plague. This one is my number 13. Well, we all can't be winners here. This feels like a diet version of Kill. Like, this doesn't feel like a proper follow-up to arguably the most aggressive and the most, rage-inducing albums you guys have done. Like, this kind of feels like something they would have turned out, like, in the middle point of, like, Gallery and Gore Obsessed. Like, it kind of feels like that, in a way, where it's not bad, it's still good, but it's just, it doesn't really click with me like the first, like the one before and especially the one after this. You still get some good tracks, so like Scalding Hail was fantastic. Cauldron of Hate is a fucking beast of a song. Carnivorous Swarms, Carrying Sculpted Entities, Scared from Ear to Eye is fantastic. It's just the problem is, it just doesn't feel like the proper follow-up to Kill. If it was placed in any other discography, it would be one of that band's best albums, but to me, it just didn't really do anything. Like the production's good, but it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. So, sorry guys, wasn't really a big fan of this one. I was pretty disappointed by this one. So, it's not bad. It's still good for what it is. But coming off of a beast of an album and Kill, this one is definitely probably the most disappointing follow-up in the band's entire catalog, if you ask me. So, yeah. Not much more needs to be said. It's my number 13. Sorry. So, they released a live DVD in 2011 called Global Evisceration. They would tour with children. After Evisceration Plague, they would tour with Children of Bodom to promote Evisceration Plague. And after a shit ton of tours, because again, that's what this band loves to do, they would go back into the studio. And on March 13th, 2012, we would get Torture. Now, I actually just showcased this album and the next couple albums in a recent collection update video that I did. This is my number 4, though. God damn, this is what the follow-up to Kill should have been. This is, again, back to the aggression, back to the more hostile moments. The production on this album is fantastic. Like, I feel like they kind of beefed up everything on this album. And it's punchy as all hell, too. And I actually just got done listening to this album earlier today, and there's still some tracks on this album that I absolutely dig. Demented Aggression, one of my favorite opening tracks. Scourge of Iron is awesome. Encased in Concrete. As Deep as the Knife Will Go. Fall Home Then Killed. Let's see what else. The Strangulation Chair. Cage Contorted. Crucifier Revenged. Yeah, this is a damn near flawless album. I love the bass work on this album in particular, especially on what the hell song was it? I think it was on Strangulation Chair, I think, where it's like it's kind of got like that, and I think it's absolutely awesome. And yeah, I think this is one of the best albums the band's ever done. I dig the shit out of this album. This is just some damn good death metal right here. I can't get enough of it. It comes in at my number 4. Killer stuff. The proper follow-up to Kill, if you ask me. So, after Torture, they would tour the U.S. with Hour of Penance and Misery Index. And about 2 years later, this time with Mark Lewis of Audio Hammer as producer, taking over for Eric Rutan, on September 16th, 2014, we would get A Skeletal Domain. This one's my number 6. I feel like some people don't give this album a lot of credit. And I don't know why. I think this album is just as good, if not better, than Torture. Like, there are some absolutely crushing songs on this album. And, again, it got a little bit tricky, especially with around, like, the top 5. But I would say this is one of the best albums they've ever done. And I really love the album artwork, too, where it's, like, this weird, like, tree totem and, like, these skeletons are going up to it. I think it's a little cool. But all these songs kick ass. Like high velocity impact splatter, sadistic embodiment's fantastic. Killer Become, a title track. Headlong into Carnage brings back more of that thrashy feel. The Murderer's Pact, Funeral Cremation, Ice Pick Lobotomy, Victor of Cruelty is a beast of a song. Bloodstained Cement, like top to bottom, this album fucking rips. I dig the shit out of this one, and I feel like this one might be their most underrated album because I feel like this album didn't get a lot of love for this album, but yeah, this is just some killer stuff right here. Not really much more I need to say. I love the production on this album. Like, it kind of varied from track to track, but I think the production is damn good. I kind of like the break they did from Rutan with this one. So, yeah, killer stuff right here. Not much more need to be said. Buy it. It's my number 6. So after Skeletal Domain, more touring, and studio time. That's basically it. Tour, studio, what have you. So it's kind of like a birthing process at this point. So Rutan will come back for production, and on November 3rd, 2017, we would get Red Before Black. This one, unfortunately, fell to my number 12. This, I feel like, was a bit of a drop-off from A Skeletal Domain. And again, it's not a bad album. It's just, to me, there wasn't anything too memorable about this album. Like, I literally got done listening to this album a couple hours ago, and I kind of already forgot what tracks I really do dig on this album. Like, it's not bad. It's just the problem is there's just not really a whole lot of standout tracks on this album for me. The title track's cool, or not title track, Code the Slashers, Shed on My Human Skin, Firestorm, Vengeance, Corpus Delicti, Scavenger, Consuming Death. Like, there's some great tracks on this album. It's just, the problem is there wasn't a whole lot of memorability going into this album. I kind of like the album cover where it's a guy with, like, bloodshot eyes. He's got, like, the teeth, like bracelet on his arm or on his hand. He's got like a weird like katana. That's, I think, kind of cool. But yeah, just not a whole lot of standout tracks to me for this one, unfortunately. It's just the Cannibal Corpse album. That's all I can really say about it. Not bad, but not great. It's my number 12. It's good. Listen to it. Not saying don't listen to it, but could be better. So after Red Before Black, they would do some more tours, but 2018, oh boy, this is when shit really hit the fan. Big news happened when Pat O'Brien got arrested. So, what happened? Why did Pat get arrested? So, in late 2018, Pat was arrested in Tampa for lounging on an officer with a knife and got tased. Yes, you heard that, folks. Pat launched at an officer with a knife and got tased in Florida. How the hell this guy not get shot is beyond me. But all joking aside, why did Pat do this, you may be asking? So, Pat went crazy and went into a neighbor's backyard. Apparently he knocked over the neighbor's wife, and camped out there for almost no discernible reason. Meanwhile, Pat's house was engulfed in flames, and he claimed the rapture was coming. I guess he predicted the future about 7 years later. So, Pat was camping out in the backyard while the police showed up. A deputy was given orders. Pat lunged at the cop with the knife and got tased and arrested. He was charged with assault and burglary and a couple other charges. At his court appearance, he wore an anti-suicide vest with his wrist chained together. And a few days later, he was released after posting bond. So, the day after the fire subsided, the firefighters found a litany of weapons. A lot of weapons that would basically arm a small fucking navy or a small country if they wanted to be cute. So they found a lot of weapons, safes, and explosive devices. 50 shotguns, 10 semi-auto rifles, 2 Uzi-style rifles, 20 handguns, 2 flamethrowers, not just one, 2, because one's not good enough. shit ton of ammunition, 3 skulls, and a sawed-off shotgun. So Pat really almost got away with all of the weaponry because he had the stuff to register for it, but it wasn't legal in Florida to have a sawed-off shotgun, so I guess there's that. So in 2021, Pat was sentenced to 150 days of community service, a $24,000 restitution, 5 years probation for drug and alcohol evaluation, and he did serve some time. Now, since then, he's kind of just been under the radar. He has been playing at some shows, and, you know, people just looked at this as a mental episode. I kind of look at it as well. I don't think Pat really meant any harm, but it was still batshit insane to see all of this unfold. So, after Pat's arrest, the band was supporting tours for Slayer's Farewell Tour, which would take place in the spring of 2019 with Amon Amarth and Lamb of God joining. So with Pat gone, who would be his replacement? Well, he already does the production, so he's basically part of the band at this point. Good old Eric Rutan of Morbid Angel and of Hate Eternal. So Rutan was in the band. They would tour with Die Artist Murder throughout 2019. And unfortunately, in 2020, we all know what happened. The pandemic happened. But the guys were stuck at home, but they were able to write new material, and into the studio they went on April 16th, 2021. We would get Violence Unimagined. This is a big one for me because I remember listening to this album, and I actually, when I did my ranking for all the albums I listened to in 2021, this was my number 2 behind Exodus's Persona Non Grata. Because this was my favorite death metal album of 2021. Now I've listened to more albums, obviously. You know, as time's gone on, I've done my rankings a little bit better. But, yeah, this was one of the first Cannibal Corpse albums I ever listened to. And this is my number 7. I had this in the top 5 originally, but a couple other albums beat it out. But make no mistake, this album is still fucking killer from start to finish. The opening track alone really sets the tone for this album, Murderous Rampage, which is one of my favorite Cannibal openings. I would say probably the best opening track since Staring Through the Eyes of the Dead. Like, that's just how good that song is, in my opinion. Necrogenic Resurrection, Inhumane Harvest. Oh my god, that is such a catchy hook. Everything must go. So damn good. Condemnation Contagion. Surround Kill Devour is one of my favorite Cannibal songs. That is so fucking catchy. Ritual Annihilation. Follow the Blood. Bear, 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 bear. Love that, like, bending riff. Bound and Burn. Slowly Sawn. Like, top to bottom, this album is fucking amazing. Yes, all of this. Look at that. The Teeth Lady. The Teeth Lady thing. It's Melina from Mortal Kombat. There you go there. Yeah, she looks like she's about to give someone a big kiss. A little kiss on the cheek right there. But, yeah, this is just fucking killer stuff right here. Absolutely fantastic. One of the best albums in their entire discography, if you ask me. And, yeah, can't get enough of it, and it's my number 7. So after Violence Unimagined, the band would announce that Rutan would join the band full-time. And in early 2022, they do a U.S. tour with Whitechapel Revocation. Then in the fall, they would do a tour with Black Anvil, Dark Funeral, and Immolation. So I was probably wrong with the black metal acts. I got that confused with somebody else. I do apologize for that. So yeah, they would tour with Immolation, Dark Funeral, and Black Anvil. And in January 2023, they announced a new album was being made. And we were all excited, as yours truly. And on February 22nd, 2023, we would get Chaos Horrific. So we literally just surpassed the 2-year anniversary of this album, literally 5 days ago. It is now the 27th. So yeah, it's been 2 years since this album was released. I remember when I did a review of this album. I fucking love this album. This is my number 5, by the way. This is one of the best albums they've done in their entire career. This is the best modern album they have done ever. like, in their entire career. Like, I'm being dead serious. This is one of the best albums they have ever done. I remember listening to this for the first time and was being blown away just how much I loved it. The first song, Summon for Sacrifice, was fantastic, and then Bloodblind was a fantastic single as well. Overlords of Violence is a fantastic opener. Frenzy Feeding, of course, the aforementioned Summon for Sacrifice and Bloodblind. Vengeful Evasion. Chaos Horrific, the title track, is one of my favorites. Fracture and Refracture has a bit of a Carcass kind of vibe that I really like. Pitchfork Impalement. Pestilential Rectus, and Drain You Empty, which is one of the big standouts, is probably the doomiest thing they have done since Infinite Misery off a Kill. Like, that is such a bleak fucking riff, and it's so damn good. Yeah, I can't get enough of this one. I love the album artwork too. It's kind of the artwork's been son of a bitch. Ooh. Sorry, folks. I've been a little bit under the weather lately because of the weather change, but the album artwork's getting a little more comic book themed, but I don't mind it. As long as it's cool and as long as Vince Locke is doing it, I ain't gonna really complain all that much. But yeah, top 5, no questions asked. My number 5, banger stuff right here. So, after Chaos Horrific, a tour in the U.S. with Mayhem, Gorguts, and Blood Incantation, a tour in Europe with in the fall of 2024 with Municipal Waste and Immolation. Man, Immolation and Cannibal Corpse really love to tour together. Unfortunately, during this tour, though, Eric's home would become a victim of Hurricane Helen, and which forced him to leave early, which made Barrett do all the guitar duties. Now, in the spring of this year, they would do a tour with Meshuggah and Carcass. And I think around this time, too, that's when Brandon Ellis, formerly of Black Dahlia Murder, would actually join for Cannibal Corpse for a few live shows. And funnily enough, during a stop tour in Pittsburgh, a couple got married during the set, which I thought was pretty fun. And a couple months ago, they announced a tour with Fulci, Full of Hell, and Municipal Waste. And they're still on tour, and Brandon Ellis just left around this time. Don't remember who his replacement is, but hey, you got a badass guitarist in Brandon Ellis, so I guess that counts for something. And yeah, they're still touring to this very day. This band does not stop. Like, they're gonna tour, make an album. They're gonna do it till they can't no more. And they're in their late 50s or like early 60s, and they're still kicking ass. Like, especially Paul in particular, but yeah, this was a fun one to go through, and also a massive pain in the ass because, Jesus Christ, 16 albums of consistency. This thing is going to be the end of me. I am willing to bet. So, folks, that does it for my Cannibal Corpse ranking. What did you guys think of this video? What is your favorite Cannibal Corpse album? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, as for the next one. Now, I do have maybe enough time to maybe do another band's discography, but I'm rethinking about it. I was thinking about doing a shorter discography that consists of like maybe 5 or 6 albums, but since winter is going to be coming around the corner, we're starting to approach fall, I figured, fuck it, well, I might as well just do my last band of the year and just get along with it. And of course, the last band I'm going to be doing for this ranking of 2025 is probably the most notorious band of all time with the darkest backstory in the history of music. I, of course, are going to be talking about Norwegian black metal legends, Mayhem. That's going to be an interesting one to do because I feel like the backstory is going to be taking up a good chunk of the video. So, yeah, I get to talk about Varg Vikernes and Euronymous. 2 good Christian boys. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment, tap that big red subscribe button, and tap the bell so when I upload, you guys will be notified. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Most importantly, join the herd. Till you guys next video. Peace out.